Last time we had spent time talking about what? I know it's been a long time. We spoke about the story of Osama. What happened with Osama? Yeah, that even if you doubt a person's Islam, that doesn't give you right to kill them. And we also spoke about
types of death.
The types of murder, right?
Types of murder, and how they should get addressed.
Okay.
In Sharia. And then besides that, we spoke about
why didn't Osama
pay.
Yeah.
And
why didn't he pay and why didn't he fast?
why didn't he fast? Because there was a doubt.
There was a doubt on?
There was a doubt on the Islam of the person that he killed.
Right, there was a doubt on the Islam of the person. Ahsant. Good. طيب. I think that was last what we spoke about. Yep. Right. So today, قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى. Can you tell them to move, please? وحدثنا شيبان بن فروخ وعبد الله بن محمد بن أسماء الضبعي قال حدثنا مهدي وهو بن أيمون قال حدثنا واصل أهدب عن أبي وائل عن حذيفة أنه بلغه أن رجلا ينم الحديث قال حذيفة سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لا يدخل الجنة نمام. So in this hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says that there was an individual, it had reached them that he was a namam, he was a tail carrier. So what is a tail carrier?
Tail carrier?
Yeah. So a tail carrier is somebody who he takes a piece of information or a story. Yeah, T-A-L-E. Yeah, not T-A-I-L. No. So,
Is it like a messenger, or is it someone who spreads messages?
Someone who spreads messages. So what kind of messages?
I guess whatever that he can spread it out, like with good or bad.
And why does he do it?
To get attention, to get.
Why would somebody spread stories? Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's right to get attention and to give himself what?
Like he's the
importance.
He's the first one who's.
He's like the first one who heard it or the first one who said it. And usually, what is the result of this? What happens?
It can cause chaos. I mean, depending on what tail he's carrying, I mean, usually it's negative. It will cause within the society like bad thoughts amongst people.
So what's interesting in this hadith is that over here, that this individual, he would actually go to the governor. He would actually go to the governor. As comes in the next narration, as comes in the next hadith. But we'll talk, inshallah, when we get there, we'll talk about it. قال حدثنا علي بن حجر السعدي وإسحاق بن إبراهيم قال إسحاق أخبرنا جرير عن منصور عن إبراهيم عن همام بن الحارث قال كان رجل ينقل الحديث إلى الأمير. So you had an individual who used to take tales to the Amir, to the governor. فكنا جلوسا في المسجد, and we were sitting in the masjid. فقال القوم, so a group of people said هذا ممن ينقل الحديث إلى الأمير. So they actually pointed him out. They said, this guy, he takes stories to the Amir. قال فجاء حتى جلس إلينا. So he was walking in and they said, this is the guy that takes the stories, and he sat amongst us. فقال حذيفة. So then Hudayfa was sitting amongst them, Hudayfa ibn Yaman, very famous companion. سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول, and he says, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لا يدخل الجنة فتات, right? Or قتات. لا يدخل الجنة قتات. So over here he says the bearer of false tales, or the ones who carries false tales, will not enter paradise. So he dealt with the situation very very openly and very directly, without doing what?
Without, I guess,
making them feel bad.
Not necessarily feel. Oh no, he should feel bad. Without what though? Did he say you are carrying tails?
Without pointing it out.
Without pointing out this individual.
He said it over there, but the message went.
Right.
He threw the arrow, but the arrow still found that target.
Right. So the thing is, he said it in a general way, so that he wasn't actually pointing out that person. Why? Because the people, they're just saying this. And is it possible that they're mistaken? Right? Is it possible that maybe even some of them are lying? Absolutely, right? So Hudayfa, out of his wisdom, he didn't actually point him out. He said, you, come here. Didn't you know that you shouldn't tail carry? So over here, why is it important? In the first hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, "La yadkhulul jannata nammam." Like a person who tails carry will not enter paradise. And Hudayfa, he says the same thing, but I would say the context is very specific. In the first hadith, it's general, right? Anybody who tail carries. And in the second hadith, the people are saying they're complaining about him taking tails to the emir, to the governor. But it still has to do with the same idea that we were talking about, right? There's one more hadith, and we'll read that inshallah, and then we'll talk about all the hadith together.
The adab of the Hudayfa is amazing. Like,
yeah.
Trust issue. I mean, instead of, like you said, pointing it out.
Yeah. He just kept it a general advice, and not just that, he didn't say anything from himself, right? He said what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. قال وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا أبو معاوية ووكيع عن الأعمش حاب تحويل الإسناد وحدثنا من جاب ابن الحارث التميمي ولفظ له قال أخبرنا ابن مسهر عن الأعمش عن إبراهيم عن همام ابن الحارث. So this end of the hadith is very similar to the previous one. قال كنا جلوس مع حذيفة, that we were sitting with حذيفة في المسجد فجاء في المسجد in the masjid فجاء رجل حتى جلس إلينا. So somebody came into the masjid and he sat down with us. فقيل لحذيفة, and it was said to حذيفة, إن هذا يرفع إلى السلطان أشياء, is that he takes to the sultan, he takes to the governor, he takes to the leader, he says things to him, and implying that he takes information, and what is he doing?
Reporting.
He's reporting. He's almost spying, right? فقال حذيفة إرادة أن يسمعه, and he said it in a way that he wanted him to hear. سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول, I heard the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم say, لا يدخل الجنة قتات, that the person who tail carries will not enter the paradise. Or the one, like qattat is a little bit more specific. It's like the one who carries false tales, right? The one who carries false information. And we had said, like, what drives an individual to do this? Okay, it's possible that they make a mistake, right? It's definitely possible that they make a mistake. But even if you make a mistake and you mishear something, so if you hear...
The drive that he gets of causing or getting...
Yeah.
Yeah, the inner drive. It's not just like,
it's not sincere, right?
It's not sincere, yeah. It's a negative action.
Right, it's a negative action. And why is it that he does it? Because he wants to? Right? Sometimes he actually wants to hurt others.
And I think he gets pleasure from it.
And he gets pleasure from it, right? He gets pleasure from it and like in doing it because he has now, because there are two ways for an individual to feel that he has raised himself, right? What are in general, what are those two ways? So if I want to become better, or I want to, here, let me put it this way. If I want to feel better, what are some ways that I can do that? All right, I can help others, I can increase my skill set, I can gain knowledge, right? These are a lot of things that I can do to better myself. What is the other way? That's the positive way.
Opposite.
What is the opposite? Hurting other people and bringing other people down. Right, destroying things. Because I think that by bringing them down, I'm bringing myself up, right? And this is what's dangerous about this. So here you have in this hadith also, how do you deal with the namam, right? So how do you deal with the tail carrier, right? Because that was one part. One part of it was the Prophet ﷺ, him giving a spiritual warning on what happens to a person who tail carries. But in this, we also have a practical lesson on how to deal with that person. So what are some practical lessons that we can take away?
How Hudayfa dealt with it? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So this is, so Hudayfa, he dealt with it, right? People came to him and they were like, man, this guy's a qattat, or this guy's an imam.
I think the smart part about it was, like you said, Hudayfa did not know whether they're telling the truth or not. But he made it in general and made that person as well hear that there's a and if he is one of them, you should be, be careful. And if it wasn't his words, it was the Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam words.
Okay, so he's basically, by not putting it on himself,
Cautiously addressing.
right? He's addressing it cautiously.
I think this is of him learning from the school of Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as well. I think if there was a problem in the community, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would not do the same thing too. He would actually go to the minbar and and address it generally. He would not point it out.
Good.
So that shows that he took.
He took a lesson from the Prophet Ahsant. So over here, actually, what Imam al-Nawawī does, he quotes Ghazali, and he says there are, I think, 6. Yeah, he mentioned 6 lessons. He says the first lesson is أن لا يصدقه لأن النمام فاسق. He says that if somebody brings to me a piece of information, I shouldn't what?
Verify.
I shouldn't what?
Believe.
So if I have to verify, I'm not what? I'm not trusting him, right? Basically, if he comes to me with a piece of information, I shouldn't trust. I shouldn't trust it. That's number 1. الثاني أن ينهاه عن ذلك بنصحه ويقبح له فعله. That I should warn him from tale carrying and tell him that what you're doing is wrong and evil. الثالث أن يبغضه في الله تعالى فإنه بغيض عند الله تعالى. He says that, and he should hate him for the sake of Allah. And he should hate it for the sake of Allah. Why? Because doing namima is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
Prohibited.
not just, okay, so if he prohibits something, that means how does Allah feel about it?
Very bad.
All right, he hates it, right? This is something that he hates, so he's saying because he's doing something that Allah hates, huh?
Surah Al-Hujurat is that is it like ayat in Surah Al-Hujurat?
Yeah.
Someone brings information.
Yeah, in ja'akum fasiq binaba'in fatabayyanu, so if a fasiq, if a sinner comes to you with information, then you should verify it. You should verify it. So the other thing he mentioned, he says so that you have to hate him, and it's an obligation to hate this person because he's doing something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates. He said, fourthly, أن لا يظن بأخيه الغائب السوء. He says that because he's bringing you a piece of information, he might be talking about someone else, right? Don't think bad about that third person. Don't think bad about that third person. Why? Because it's very possible that what this person is saying is wrong or is a lie. He says, fifthly, أن لا يحمله ما حكي له على تجسس والبحث عن ذلك. That if he tells me something, I should not investigate it. Why?
It might open up more sight, it might not open up.
Right. So here, and I think this is a good way of putting it. Do I need to verify everything that people are telling me? Especially if I know this person is causing fitna. When do I need to verify?
When you see that certain actions actually going on.
Oh, so there are other things that I can verify with. Not for like putting that aside. What is the first step? At what point do I determine if this deserves investigation or not? Because we already said that not everything deserves investigation, correct? At what point do I make that decision?
If he did something like privately.
Even if he says it privately, right? Because a person who is an imam, a person who is a tale carrier, does it matter if he says it privately or publicly? No. Okay. So over here he's saying don't investigate. But are there cases where you guys agree that we should investigate? Yeah. At what point should I investigate? What if the person who's coming to me is trustworthy? That's what I'm saying, right?
We're talking about the person actually.
Yeah. So no, I'm saying, in what situation would you?
If it's trustworthy.
If the person coming to me is trustworthy, then I should,
Look into it.
right? Then I can look into it, and then I can investigate. But if the person I know, man, like this guy is just always telling stories, what should I do?
Let it go.
Just let it go, and I should ignore it.
Or hate it.
I'm sorry.
Or hate him.
Hate him, right? That's what I'm supposed to do. So he says, sixthly, أن لا يرضى لنفسه ما نهى النمام عنه. So basically, if this tale carrier is bringing me something, I shouldn't be pleased with the fact that he's bringing me this information, right? Because sometimes it becomes very natural because we feel like we're the first one to hear about it. So that pleasure that I'm getting, I should also work to remove that from my heart. So these are just some things that he mentions. I think some of them are more easily implemented than others, and I think some of them are a little harsh, right? I can definitely. So I think this is an interesting point, and maybe an interesting point of discussion. Sometimes we hear and we listen that, we should hate the sin but not the sinner, right? How practical is that? Is it possible? It depends, right? So what? Like, what is a situation where that might not be the case? Or what is a situation that might be the case? So, example, if someone murders another person's parent or sibling or wife or husband, how do you think they're going to feel about that person? Can I tell that person you need to hate the action and not the person? No.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think I have a scenario.
Go ahead.
And this is actually from one of the Sahabas,
Mhm.
and he put it beautifully. So I think he was in the market,
Mhm.
and they were beating all the people that were beating one person.
Mhm.
And he goes and he stops. What are you guys doing? And he says, he's a thief. He just stole again. And he said, instead of beating him, why don't you guys help him? He's drowning in the sin.
In sin, yeah.
If someone is drowning in the ocean, you're
Yeah.
going to save them, right?
Yeah.
So, hate the sin, but not him. If he actually stops and
Sure. And so what is the situation here that we might be able to separate? That makes it easier to do that. What is he doing?
sinning.
No, but what is the action that he did? Because a person who killed someone, that's sinning too, right?
The level of sin.
It's not the level of sins. I think it's the type of sin that has an effect. So, for example, if somebody steals $5 from me, is it necessary that I'm going to hate that person?
No, that's what I'm trying to do.
Right. I might be angry with him. I might be upset with him, but I'm not going to am I going to go through my whole life like, oh man, this guy, he stole $5 from me. Right? Like, I remember those $5 that he took from me.
Yeah. So, that's kind of
Right.
what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
But there might be certain sins that are much more personal, right? If somebody, like murder was one example, like rape is another example, right? That's another example. Like, is it easy to separate the sin from the person at that point?
Like if you're a known member in the community and
Yeah.
someone in Jama'ah, falsifies, brings lies.
Sure. I'm saying even those situations, somebody makes a claim against you, and they're like, he stole money from me, and he did this, and you didn't do anything. But is it possible that I'll be like, you know what, this guy, he just says all the things. Is it necessary that I hate that person? Maybe some people would, right? Like, and I can see that. But I'm saying there's more. I think there's more. Sometimes it's a choice, sometimes not, right? Like our emotions can get the best of us. But I'm saying, can it get to a point where I can actively separate between the action and the person? Yes, I can, right? And there are certain actions that we agree that it's very difficult to what? To separate those things, right? We can't, right? There's definitely areas where they're very closely tied together, and it's like, yeah, in that situation, I don't think I can differentiate, right? But maybe lesser things for me would be maybe stealing, somebody yelling at me, maybe somebody hits me, right? Maybe somebody makes a claim about me and says something about me. Those things I might be able to. It's easy to separate and be like, you know what? No, what he's doing is wrong. I don't know about him, may Allah forgive him or may Allah guide him, right? It becomes easier, but there are certain things, like we said, murder, rape, it becomes much more difficult to separate those things. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our families. So the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, he's saying that this type of person doesn't enter paradise, what did we say that means? خلاص يعني he's right. So this is clearly an action that's hated by Allah, meaning that a person who tail carries and who causes fitna between people, he is what?
He's enemy of Allah.
Yani, well, you would say he is not deserving of paradise, right? He's not deserving of paradise. So when the Prophet ﷺ said that he won't enter it, meaning that he doesn't deserve to enter paradise. And this shows us the gravity
of the scale
of this sin. And what does this sin have in common with some of the other sins that we had spoken about that talk about not entering paradise?
all of them is the scale actually that causes within the, not just within the whole community.
Yeah.
That's what
Right.
you know, common is. It's
It
not
causes.
like one person or one like,
Yeah.
family. It's literally a whole community.
Right. It causes distrust in the community. Right. It causes distrust in the community, and it causes problems in the community. And we had said this, like if we look at many of the sins, it's very easy to see that the communal problems that those sins cause and why the gravity of those things are so problematic. So over here, there's basically two levels that are mentioned in these series of hadith that Imam Muslim brings. What are those two levels of tale carrying? One, the Prophet ﷺ says generally, and then the other next two narrations, they talk about what specifically?
Specific action, specifically telling that person itself is. So when he said it generally.
Generally.
Whether good or bad.
And over here, why?
Sahaba said specifically, kind of addressing.
So here, let me ask this way: there's general tale carrying, and then the next two hadith, the people are especially mad at this person. Why?
Because that's what they love to do. That's what they.
The other people who were sitting with Hudayfa's students, they were especially mad at this person. Why were they so upset with him? What was he doing that was different? What was the level of fitna that he was causing? He was taking it to the Amir. And why is that a bigger problem than people just kind of talking amongst each other?
I mean, you're taking it to someone who can actually make good decisions.
Right.
Correctly.
So there can actually be a judicial consequence for what happens, right? If you're going to the Amir, you're going to the Sultan, there can actually, the police can actually become involved, and you will get in bigger trouble than if you just had people talking much. Yeah.
It's not within your, did you hear this? It's
actually
him taking directly and kind of snitching, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So like there's a direct effect that can happen to you, and it can hurt you or your family, right? Versus, and again, can it cause problems in the community? Yeah, maybe some people might not be friends with you, or maybe people stop like dealing with you or interacting with you. But taking it to the authorities, you've now taken it to the next level, because there's actual consequences that can happen, either whether they be financial or jail time or or flogging or whatever the case might be. I'm sorry?
A harm can be caused.
Yeah. Right? There's a direct penal harm or a judicial harm that can happen to that individual. قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة ومحمد بن المثنى وابن بشار قالوا حدثنا محمد بن جعفر عن شعبة عن علي بن المدرك عن أبي زرعة عن خرشة بن الحر عن أبي ذر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ثلاثة لا يكلمهم الله يوم القيامة. That there are three people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not speak to on the day of judgment. ولا ينظر إليهم, and He will not look toward them. ولا يزكيهم, nor will He praise them. ولهم عذاب أليم, and they will have a painful torment. قال فقرأها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثلاث مرار. So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said this 3 times. He repeated this 3 times. قال أبو ذر خابوا وخسروا. So over here he said they failed and they lost. من هم يا رسول الله? Who are these people? المسبل والمنان والمنفق سلعته بالحلف الكاذب. So over here He ﷺ said, they are the dragger of the lower garment, the recounter of obligation, the seller of goods by false oath. So over here, the musbil and the mannan, right? So, and then munfiq sil'atuhu bil half al-kadhib. So basically, you have this person who drags his lower garment, and we'll talk about what that means. And then he says, and the mannan is the recounter of obligation, right? Huh?
What is that?
And we'll talk about that inshallah. And the seller of goods by false oath. So I think the first thing we'll talk about is the beginning of hadith, like what is it that the Prophet ﷺ means by those, and then we'll break down each of these individually inshallah. So over here, the Prophet ﷺ said there are 3 who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not speak to on the day of judgment. So basically, He will not speak to them, He's not going to look at them, right? He's not going to praise them in any way, and they were going to have a painful chastisement or a painful punishment. What is basically the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying about these 3 individuals, these 3 people? That on the day of judgment, what's going to happen? They're going to be ignored. They're going to be ignored. Why is that so? Why is that so terrifying?
Maybe it's because, like, just like, first of all, you're getting ignored by your Lord, and then the second thing is that you're also getting a paid punishment. So you know those two things.
So there's a punishment that is written for them. There's a punishment that's written for them, and the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ignoring them. So here, just imagine on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the individuals. There's hisab that's going on, and there's a complete group of people where He Azza wa Jal is just not giving them any time, He's not giving them any attention. How are those people going to feel? Huh? They're going to feel terrified. They're like, all of these people are going forward. It's like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but you're like, you're called to the principal's office, and there are people who are going in and out, and you're just sitting. Right? Either there are people who are coming in and out of it, there are people who are coming in and they're leaving, and there's another person, and your name is not being called.
You don't know.
Why? You don't know, and not just that, because all of these people are going, what is happening in your heart?
What's going to happen to you?
Right? You're like, man, these people, they're getting dealt with very quickly. What is going to happen to me? Right? What's going to happen with me? So, and that's part of the punishment, right? That's part of the punishment. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ignoring these individuals, right? That's one main part. And they know for sure what?
They know for sure that they're not going to be, they will be ignored.
Right? They know for sure that, not the ignoring part, they're going to be what?
Punished.
Right? They're going to be punished. They know for sure. They know that what they did was wrong, right? Like I said, like you're sitting outside the principal's office, you know for sure that what's going to happen. There's going to be a punishment, but you don't know what that punishment is. And the longer you have to wait, the more you feel about what?
The more painful it gets.
Right, the more pain, right? So the more pain you, why? Because you're constant.
Punishment is
It's the waiting. So subhanAllah, like even this idea of waiting is something that is considered a punishment, which is why, one lesson that we can definitely take away from this is that when we make a promise to someone else, or when we deal with someone else, we should never what?
Break it.
Not just that, even before that. We shouldn't keep them waiting, right? When we keep people waiting, it is a type of what? Right? It's a type of punishment. It's a type of punishment. If I make a decision, if I want, if there's any situation in our life where there's a yes or no, I should do my best to what?
Give a time frame and finish it within time frame.
Give a time frame. Give a time frame. And is a time frame later?
It's like if you get an argument with your wife, let's talk later. When is later?
Later, right, I tell people this all the time. Later is not a time. Right? If someone wants to talk, I say, I will talk to you tomorrow at 6 p.m. I need a time. Right? So if I'm talking to anyone, and if anybody needs, if anybody wants to talk, I might not be ready to talk, and that is fine. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. But the moment I say later, tomorrow, we'll see, what have I done? I've left this person hanging. And leaving things hanging, what happens with the other person is a very parallel situation here. That you feel, when I don't know when something is going to happen, I get what?
It's nothing worse than that.
Right. No, I get anxiety.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? I mean, this is a very natural response that we all have. Like we get anxious and we get anxiety because we don't know when it's going to happen, when we're going to discuss it. And what happens is that if there's somebody I want to talk to about something, and he just keeps pushing it off, in my heart, I'm constantly going to be like, okay, well, when are we going to talk about it? I'm going to kind of be around that person, hoping that that they're going to bring it up or they're going to discuss it. What I've essentially done is I'm punishing that person. And doing that without right, what do we call that? We call it dhulm, right? We call it oppression. So that if I want to know what a type of oppression is leaving people hanging is a type of oppression. Why? Because I have the ability to tell them yes, or I have the ability to tell them no, and that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. Do I have the ability to do everything? Absolutely not, right? Like I'm a human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created me weak, and I'm limited in what I can do. I'm limited in what I can perform. I'm limited in the things that I can do. And if I understand that, then I should be courageous enough to tell somebody no. It's very simple. And some people might be like, oh, well, this person wanted this, or they were trying to do that. What is the advantage when I tell somebody no?
You just cut it off right there.
Well, for me, but I'm saying if you come to me and you're like, hey, can I borrow your book? And I say no. What can you do?
I can look other options.
You can look at other options. But if I don't tell you no, you're going to keep what? You're going to keep waiting for me. You're going to keep hoping and you're going to keep waiting. But the moment I tell, and people don't understand, like sometimes when I say this, I say no is very empowering for the person answering and for the person receiving the answer. Why? Because that person can pivot. And that person can look at what their other options are and learn and see how to make other decisions. So here, what is one of the biggest adab? For waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because they don't know when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to deal with them. And the longer they have to wait, the more anxious it becomes. So when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, that they have a painful punishment, the punishment is twofold. What is that painful punishment? The waiting, and then when they actually are punished. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. So over here, the first person that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, al-musbil, yani the one who drags his lower garment.
This is talking specifically about those like ignorance, arrogant, or people.
Over here you need more hadith to help explain this, right? So I think we have a few more. So we have two more. Let me go through them, inshallah, and then maybe they'll help explain.
There's a supporting hadith for that.
Yes.
That's why, like he's talking specifically, because there's
Ahsant.
people actually, there's some cultures they wear long. or
Yes.
there's
So,
something that is-
and those are things we need to express. Like we need to talk about that. Right? You know, what is it that the Prophet ﷺ actually meant? قال وحدثني أبو بكر ابن خلاد الباهلي قال حدثنا يحيى وهو القطان قال حدثنا سفيان قال حدثنا سليمان الأعمش عن سليمان ابن مسهر عن خرش ابن الحر عن أبي ذر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ثلاثة لا يكلمهم الله يوم القيامة, that there are three Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not speak to on the day of judgment. المنان الذي لا يعطي شيئا إلا منه, that a mannan. So who is the mannan? An individual. He gives, whenever he gives something, he keeps reminding the person that he did something for that, he did a favor on them. وَالْمُنْفِقْ سِلْعَتُهُ بِالْحَلْفِ الْفَاجِرِ, so an individual who sells something on a false oath. Like this is genuine 100%, like, you know, I mean, like, I swear by Allah, this thing, it's going to last you a lifetime, right? And then tomorrow it breaks, right? وَالْمُسْبِلْ إِزَارُهُ, and the one who drags his lower garment. قال وحدثنيه بشر ابن الخالد قال حدثنا محمد يعني ابن جعفر عن شعبة سمعت سليمان بهذا الإسناد وقال ثلاثة لا يكلم الله ولا ينظر إليهم, that there are three individuals who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not speak to, ولا ينظر إليهم, he will not look toward, ولا يزكيهم ولهم عذاب أليم, that these individuals will they will not be absolved, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yani will not free them, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, and they have a painful punishment. So there's a little bit of changing in the wording. And there's the next set of hadith talk about different groups of people, so I want to focus on these three. So the mannan, so the musbil, I think that's the first that we have to talk about. If we put these three together, right, the one who drags his garment, the one who keeps reminding others of the favors that he's done for them, and the one who swears by Allah and sells something to others. The last two, what connects them to help us, give us an understanding of the first?
So the first two connecting to understand the first.
Yeah. So the one who keeps reminding others, what is he basically doing? Huh? Sure. And what does that say about the character of this person?
He's actually kind of putting himself
right. So there's arrogance that's there. طيب. The last person who the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, the one who sells something by making a false oath. What's going on with him? Essentially, what are they doing? Huh, Fahmi?
Scamming?
Oh, they're scamming, right? So that individual is actually lying. The one who drags his garment, why did the Prophet ﷺ introduce that into these other two?
I think of the way that they represent themselves. Meaning like
Okay,
actually,
ahsant.
you ever seen how they walk and talk
So-
in general, like how they're
So the last,
characteristics, I think, of that.
okay, so the last two are characteristics, right? So what does a physical dress have to do with these last two, like a
I think
expression of characteristics?
If I'm not mistaken, like the third one specifically, I mean, he doesn't care as long as it benefits him. There's no fear of Allah. So that
Yeah.
means like he's putting, like,
It's the same thing. If you think about it, why am I willing to cheat someone else?
you're not scared of.
Well, I don't fear Allah. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that's definitely part of it. But how do I feel about other people? I think other people are less. Why? Because if I felt that they were equal or better than me, would I cheat them?
No.
No. I only cheat people who I what?
Think that they are less.
That think are less than me. طيب. So these last two, what is the correlation? We'll find that an individual, we said he was arrogant. In the last one, this person is also arrogant. طيب. So that means that the first thing also has to do with arrogance.
I think it's like saying like, he doesn't know I can get away. Like
Exactly. No, this person is less than me.
Like,
I'm saying this person is less than me, so I can take advantage of him, or it's okay. And sometimes we do this. It's like, man, you just took advantage of. It's like, man, he has money, meaning that I actually feel he deserves that I take advantage of him. And what does that say about me and my nafs? That I'm arrogant, right? Because I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me that I have the ability to take advantage, so I should take advantage of others because they're all lesser than me. Fahmi, do I need to take that? No? Okay. So that these individuals are less than me. So if we said, okay, the second one and the third one clearly have to do with arrogance, that gives us an insight that the first one also has to do with arrogance. And how do we know this? We have a very clear hadith in Sahih Bukhari. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, "Man jarra thawbahu khuyala, fala yanzuru Allahu ilayh." That an individual who drags his garment out of arrogance. And the Prophet ﷺ says it very clearly. The one who drags his garment out of arrogance, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not look toward anything different than this. No, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And guess who came to the Prophet ﷺ complaining? Abu Bakr. No, Abu Bakr. He says, Ya Rasulullah, ana ajur thawbi. He says, I drag my garment. I drag my garment. And he says, you don't do it out of khuyala. He said, you're skinny. You're skinny and you're weak and your garment falls. That's why you do it. So here, can I take the hukum here? Can I take a ruling here that if I have a long garment that it's not permissible? No. It's a condition. What is the condition? There's a condition, right? So here, what is the ruling on having a dragging garment?
It should be like above your ankle.
Are we reading the same hadith, aren't we? Ah. We just said Abu Bakr did it, yes or no?
If you're trying to do it like out of arrogance.
If you're doing it out of arrogance. That is the condition. Meaning that if I'm dragging my garment and I'm not doing it out of arrogance, it's permissible, it's fine. Because the Prophet ﷺ, did he tell Abu Bakr like, no, you need to do a better job? Right? And if it was haram, would the Prophet ﷺ have allowed him to do it? No. He would have corrected him right there. He'd be like, no, absolutely not. He's like, he would have said, if he came to him and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I dragged my garment, the Prophet ﷺ said, well, this is unacceptable. You have to figure out a way to keep it up. But he didn't tell him that. He said, you don't do it out of khuyala. He said, you don't do it out of arrogance. Showing us that having a dragging garment is permissible. What is not permissible? Arrogance.
Arrogance.
Ahsant.
Like showing, like at weddings, like you're customizing it with gold.
I can't customize my clothing?
I mean.
I can't wear nice clothes?
No, I mean like if the dress already looks good or maybe the clothes.
Who decides what looks good and what doesn't?
The person.
The person. Right? So I can dress up my clothes as much as I want, right? I can look as nice as I want. And is that haram? No. When does it become haram? And that's a discussion for israf.
Showing it off.
No, even showing off. Because there's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was speaking to one of the companions, and the companion, he said, Yani, well, I love to have a nice dress, Ya Rasulullah. And how did the Prophet ﷺ respond to him?
There's nothing wrong with
Then he says, "Inna Allah jameel."
Allah likes
Jameel, and yuhibb al-jamal. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beautiful and He loves
beautiful things.
He loves beautiful things. So, how do I define israf? Number one, if I buy something that I can't afford, if I buy something that I can't afford, is that israf? Yes. طيب, if I buy something I can afford, even if it's a $6,000 suit, but I can afford it, I have money, is it permissible? Yes. Why? Because I can afford it. طيب. Secondly, I can afford it and I have the money, I buy the $6,000 suit, but I don't feed my family. Then it's not permissible. So what is the first condition? The first condition is it has to be something I can afford. And secondly, it has to be something that doesn't take from the rights of others. Ahsant. Right? So I have to make sure that Allah's rights are being preserved, and I have to make sure others, right? I have to make sure the rights of others are being preserved. And what is the third? What is the third? How do I determine israf? How do I determine extravagance? The third one, right, is my personal gauge. Because sometimes we can go into a store, or sometimes we can go, I can afford it, I'm not taking anybody's rights, but when I look at the price, what happens? I feel kind of disgusted. Yes, you're like, man, this is... At that point, I should what? I should stay away from it. So, I haven't taken Allah's rights, I haven't taken anyone else's rights, but my heart is telling me no. So what should I do? I should stay away from it. So these are the three gauges that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to help us determine if something is israf or not. I think khalas, we'll stop here, inshallah, because it's almost time for that. I think it's 16. That's where yeah. خلاص, we'll stop here inshallah. Wallahu a'lam, sallallahu ala khayri khalqin nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi sahbihi wa sallam. Inshallah we'll continue with the next set of a hadith next time bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Jazakum khair. Amin wa yak. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. No, there's class tomorrow, just leave it.